There's a journey, isn't there? When you start in Power BI, there's a way that you go. We've spent a while, a few weeks now, going through and introducing you to the fact that you can start Power BI from Excel. But where do you go then? All right, lads and lasses, welcome along. Tokens Tuesday. So, Power BI, it can start within Excel, right? Power Query is the same mashup engine that's within that's within Power BI, and it's the same mashup engine that's going to be in Azure Analysis Services as well. So you're not going to lose anything by starting with Excel. What you need to think about, though, is where your next step is going to be. So Excel will give you that starting point. Once you've got that starting point and you're comfortable building dashboards within Excel, what you're going to find is you're going to start finding limitations, right? And those limitations are real. Excel is incredibly capable, right? And with Power BI as its back end, you can do an awful lot. But when you're just using Power Query, what you find is people will complain, right? There are issues that you're going to face. There are mitigations, there are ways around that. What's sensible is to start to upscale and manage how you improve and productionize and industrialize your whole data extraction process. So what does that look like? So if you remember last week, right, we went through and we got to this point where we'd broken our cycle, right? We've got this nice, great process now. Data arrives, I'm copying it to a location, I'm hitting refresh in Excel, and everything's done. Brilliant, right? My job is great now, right? It saves me hours each week, right? And I know that from my personal experience when I went through and did this, saved me hours. So I'm sure for you guys, it's going to save you hours as well. So what's the next step that I need to do now, right? The next step is to start thinking in terms of Power BI. And you can use some of that time you saved to start to bring some of that stuff into Power BI. So you can go in and you can copy your data from Power Query. You can copy the straight queries into Power BI Desktop, right? Replicate what goes on in Power BI Desktop. And once it's in Power BI Desktop, you can then start to write your DAX on top of it and build that next step up, okay? Now, the reason I'm not mentioning Power Pivot with this isn't because Power Pivot is bad, right? Power Pivot is great. But what you find is if you go down the route of Power Pivot, it's a lot harder to then say, right, I'm in Power Pivot, now I need to recreate this in Power BI Desktop because it is a recreate. Whereas with Power Query, you've got your query extract going on. You're starting to build and starting to understand what's happening, right? But I wouldn't invest much time and effort into building DAX stuff in Power Pivot, right? You can put the stuff into the data model, you can do what you need to do, right? But honestly, bring that into Power BI Desktop and do it there, right? Once you've got to the point of using Power BI Desktop, and initially, it'll probably just be you. Hey, I've got Power BI Desktop. Brilliant. Look, I've built the reports. There you can. And I can copy and paste, and that's much easier. Or even I could use Power BI Desktop and export it as PDF, maybe even save it to the service in my account on a free account and do that. And eventually what you're going to find is that the business is going to go, whoa, there's value in this, like. This is our read. It's not as bad as we thought, like. Can we have a look too? Once you get people saying, can we have a look too, right? You've gone, okay? Because Power BI, even with Pro, right? And let's be honest, even with Pro, right? If you have to be a fully Pro organization, it's not that expensive. We're not talking about hundreds of pounds that's needed for each license. We're talking about £100 a year per person, right? And if you start saying that and weighing that up against the time it takes to build all the report content, it's not that much, it's pretty small fish, right? So that helps. But the nice thing that you'll get with Power BI as you move into the service is you move from that limited sharing side, of using PBIX files, that you might share the odd PBIX file, or you're sending bits around, and I've seen it, right? You switch into a much more collaborative view, because suddenly people are able to actually go in, analyze data themselves, come up with their own conclusions about what they've seen, and then discuss that in concert with each other. And actually, you start to find that people are talking about your data without you, right? You've got now to deal with it. And they're, oh, well, I found this. And no, you're wrong, man. Right? And you're, don't deal with me, like, right? It's an amazing change. When that happens, you know that you are moving towards a more data-driven organization, because suddenly the data is leading the conversation. And once that starts, your job becomes much easier, because your job is twofold now. Number one is going to be always about making sure the data is right and accurate. Yeah, that's number one, right? And you can always speak to your IT teams to help you with that, because from their perspective, if they're not having to set up and manage and maintain and make sure that that stupid Excel spreadsheet gets sent to you every week or every day or every hour or whatever it is you need, right, they're going to be more likely to help you out with, how can we get these queries running against the production system effectively? How can we make sure that when the query runs, it's not grinding the whole production system to a halt, which again, I've seen where, oh, I need me live stuff. It's a production system. Don't run live direct queries against the production system, right? You can do it all. And then suddenly what you find, because everyone's using the same numbers, it's easier to start to say, well, we can do it more. Right? You can start to then piece together, even using Excel spreadsheets. Because if you remember with Excel spreadsheets, we were pointing that to a folder, and that folder could have the daily extract from 6 months, 12 months. Go look back in your archive and find out how long you've got and you've saved them for. Because I'm now looking at some of mine, a bit of a scary one. So you can always go in and piece those together and build like here's me last 6 months, and people suddenly going, oh, we've only got a daily. How have you done that? Right? And that's where the game changes. Once you start that journey, right, your business growth and maturity, it just changes, right? Switching into that mindset of go to Power BI, look at the data, makes the difference. So let's have a look. Let's con our into Power BI Desktop and kind of see some of the stuff that we're talking about, yeah? So this is one New York data set, isn't it? Yeah. And essentially, if you remember, it's reading an Excel spreadsheet. That's all it's doing. But from here, we've been able to build up a process that's going to extract that data. Okay. This data flow workspace. Okay? And if you remember, we talked previously that, you split them down 3 ways. So you've got your data ingestion, you've got your data model, and then you've got your consumption layer. So like the app workspaces. This is a data flow workspace. So multiple data flows can be built. You've got lots of things coming in. So you can see we've got data flow workspace for New York taxis. We've got one for the food hygiene stuff, which is on the course that we're going to do. Of course, we've got with data core, right? From there, those go through into me demo models, right? And at the moment, the only one I've got in the demo models is the New York water data, okay? But that's here. We've got the content here. The main model is here. And again, because of the way Power BI works, because you publish it from Power BI Desktop, you've got a report there, right? Which is what this is. But the main reason for it is we wanted this. We wanted this here, right? And then from there, that can go to one or more app workspaces. And this is then published as an app, okay? And because this is published as an app, what it means is that people can start to really get more information about what's happening, what's going on with the data. There's nothing to stop my consumers coming in and saying, if you remember, we did a demo where we rewrite some of the measures that are here, or we change the way they're used, the way they're presented. Once people take ownership of your data, okay, then you can start to have proper data-driven discussions that are going to lead to proper growth within your business. So what do you reckon then? It's a little bit scary, isn't it, when you start to think through that from just simply making a couple of changes and updating how our reports are built on a day-to-day basis, we can suddenly actually be moving it into a more enterprise-grade analytics solution. Now, one of the terms that always comes to mind with this, right, and it's one that you're probably something, ooh, I don't know, this is a bit odd, isn't this something IT should be doing? There's a term, it was 7 years ago now, that's a bit of an old one, isn't it? It was Jared Green. At the time he was working for Gartner, he's moved on now. But he was working for Gartner and he wrote an article about hoodie IT. And an issue, hoodie IT, what's that? Right? Hoodie IT, guerrilla IT, whatever you want to call it. The realities are, and this is something that Microsoft have recognized and that a lot of people are starting to recognize, and we saw it, there's all sorts of, I can't have hours with this, the reality is IT isn't a bastion anymore. It's not there to be like the ivory tower. We're there to control you. We need to be more in partnership with our IT organization. People have got computers at home. Many of you have got Excel at home. I've got Excel at home. Right? Well, part of the O365 family subscription that I've got for, home, right? And people are getting a bit more savvy. Now, you've got people who are expecting a little bit more from IT now, and they're a little bit more willing to get in there and really fiddle. And then, of course, we've got Google and Bing as well, where people quite happy to and find out what it is they need to do. And there's no wrong with that. What it means, though, from an analytics platform perspective is it isn't something that you're going to get a top-down approach for or a bottom-up approach for. This is something that what you need is that partnership where you have your core IT function working to support the business in their delivery of what good analytics is going to look like. Speaking of Microsoft, what they've done with their Power BI environment is they've got that very rigid, this is our core line of business, Power BI, and then they have a more ad hoc piece. And that's where you have that framework that you've got the data flows where things come in, or data warehouse, however you want to write it or however you want to do it. The idea is you've got data comes in to a point that it can then be accessed. You've got core models that you can say be taking that step and certifying or doing more with. And then because you've got all those two components together, you can start to have reports that could be certified because they come from a certified data set. Or you can have reports, contents, new models that aren't certified that somebody might be building because they're exploring something. So you have a very rigid view and you have a more ad hoc view, and you use certification and promotion to describe which is which. And this isn't new. As I say, I remember having conversations with Microsoft at the time. It was about SharePoint 2007, which is kind of saying something, right? And it was a very similar story. They had a rigid view, and then they had more ad hoc stuff that could plug into it. So it's good to see that that's remained true. And I think that says a lot about how we're looking and seeing the Azure infrastructure come through, especially as it hits the more customer focused side. So Teams, the Power Platform, all starting to be how can we have that structured view and then a more ad hoc piece that we can all interface with. So anyway, I've rattled on enough for today. Didn't forget, like and subscribe down below. Put your comments in. Let us know what's going on. Let me know what you think. But most importantly, stay safe. Keep looking out for each other. Ta-da.